All right, Donny and Andrew, go at each other. Go. Everyone's mute.
So, Donny SFT.
Andrew, my arch nemesis.
um, I guess, are you gonna ever come out with that review of the other review of by Dr. Dan?
A review of the review of the review? Well, yeah. I'm working on I guess a mini book. I've already got the cover and a lot of it done.
So it's gonna be a written response kind of thing.
Well, I'll do a video series response too, but I feel I'm also updating my special creation book. So I feel, and I understand you'll disagree, but I guess we can get into this. Yeah. I feel like Dan dodged 99% of the book. So the one argument that I think is worthwhile in giving an extensive response to is his rebuttal to my explanation to the nested hierarchical patterns that we see in terms of the distribution of the mutations found within the ERV sequences.
Sure.
But his response to the function of the ERV sequences I felt was weak, and I think he kind of dodged. So I'm curious as to your thoughts then, Andrew, because in the book, I'm not sure if you have a copy of it, but in the book,
no, unfortunately, by the way, but that's okay.
In the book, I go over countless examples, dozens of papers, a lot of papers from 2022 that dig into the numerous functional roles of the ERV sequences. And John knew it was coming. Let me just show you one, and then I wouldn't mind your response to it.
Sure.
And then, of course, you can ask me anything as well. So, John, you knew it was coming. You're enjoying your fruit tray. There we go. Look at him. One click away. John was ready.
Full screen. Full screen. Full screen.
See, John, you're the only one I'll never mess with. Okay, here. So here's just one out of 100 I could show you, but I like this one specifically, especially for just your lay person that may or may not be familiar with endogenous retroviruses as evidence for common descent. I find this excerpt rather interesting. Okay, so here we see HERVs, human-specific ones, appear to play important roles in physiology, fetal development, and human evolution. If the accidental, so here's what I want to touch on and emphasize. If the accidental infection of a mammalian ancestor by an exogenous retrovirus, and for context, evolutionists believe that endogenous retroviruses are essentially the ancient remnants or relics of past exogenous retroviral infections.
And we can get into that for sure later.
Yeah, definitely. By an exogenous retrovirus had never occurred. The placenta, and don't worry, if we only got limited time here, Andrew, I know you and I were working on setting up like a podcast discussion where we can go.
No, however long you want to go, I'm willing to go.
So the placenta and the mammals that produce it, including humans, notice this, would have never existed. And, you know, I'm a human, I'm a mammal.
Yeah.
Okay. I like to exist. I think you like to exist. So the creationist explanation is basically an answer to the question that I frequently ask. Are these really the ancient remnants of past viral infections, or are these created units of DNA function? Well, we know that without certain classes of these retrotransposons, we couldn't exist because they play incredibly important roles in placental and embryological development. So to me, that suggests design. So if we share certain of these with, let's say, the chimpanzee, well, the chimpanzee needs functional DNA elements to assist in embryological development as well. So we would expect to share. As a matter of fact, I pointed in the book, I wouldn't be surprised if all life, right, for the most part, shared endogenous retroviral-like sequences. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on this specific paper? And do you have any empirical evidence for the co-option or even just the evolution of these types of novel functions? Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess a few things come in mind here. Which one to start with? Because I know that might lead us to a tangent. To answer your question, basically, the reason I think these different functions have been co-opted is we never find, for example, a complete functional ERV in the sense that, well, if most of the time, if you do have a functional ERV sequence in its entirety, you get a retrovirus. Like we've seen that you activate it with certain mutations and out pops a retrovirus basically, and no one wants that because it obviously causes lots of disease. In fact, we see certain ERVs actually do cause diseases, many diseases in humans and other animals. But the reason I think these functions have been co-opted basically is, like I said, because we don't find complete functional ERV sequences. Instead, we find the ENV gene, for example, has been used for this particular function, or the POL gene for reverse transcriptase has been co-opted for a different function. But what would be surprising to me, at least, or at least to my limited understanding, would be if we found these different genes uh, interacting with each other in a self-organized way, in this kind of what would be a good way of just kind of like a intricate pattern. I don't think I'm explaining this well, but yeah, that's my initial thought so far. Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate that. And just based on your comments here, we could have a 2-hour discussion. But,
Yeah.
Dan pointed this out too. But in my book, I specifically address this argument that claims, well, it's not a full endogenous retroviral like element that's functional. It's just parts, right? Again, for context, your endogenous retrovirus is made of your LTRs, long terminal repeats on both ends, GAG, POL, ENV properties of it, right? And as you pointed out, the evolutionist response is, well, it's just certain aspects of the ERV that's functional, which it's wrong. Because it would be like saying, well, it's not the human being as a unit that's functional. It's just certain aspects of it, right? The heart, the liver, the kidneys. No, the properties of the endogenous retrovirus, they do function in different ways, because many of the functions include determining cell types, embryological development, as I pointed out earlier. They act as antiviral protectors, gene regulation, so on and so forth. They even act in tumor suppression. So some of their functions, yes, it's a certain aspect of it, right? Let's say the ENV or the POL gene that help with a specific role, let's say embryological development. But there's other functions where it's their properties in their entirety that allows them to perform their functional roles. Here's a fascinating paper I like to point out. Switching Sides, How Endogenous Retroviruses Protect Us from Viral Infections, from 2022. It's not just, one or two aspects or elements of the ERV unit that help with this functional role. No, it's the entire unit itself. It's their similarities, the POL, the GAG, the ENV, the LTRs, everything about them is necessary. The way they're built, the way they're structured is necessary to perform their roles in fighting off exogenous retroviral infections. Okay,
So just to clarify for a sec, are you suggesting that the designer intentionally put these gene sequences together because they had to be together to perform their specific function?
Well, notice
that doesn't make much sense to me.
No, it makes sense, because a good designer has to build systems with antiviral protectors. For example, our computers have antivirus programs, Norton antivirus, for example. And right here, if you see, ERVs have turned out to represent important components of the antiviral immune system, not only regulate cellular immune activation, but may even directly target invading viral pathogens. So this is fascinating design, amazing design, that if we are bombarded,
right, I understand that. I understand you're
I'm
talking about
almost,
the
I just
viral
want to get,
function.
to the key part of this. The point I'm trying to make is, if let's say a Russian spy, right, were to infiltrate the United States government, well, he's going to have to, he can't come in and obviously be like a Russian soldier or something, right? He has to come in and he has to look the part. Well, it turns out that the functional role of the ERVs are predicated on their similarities to exogenous retroviruses. So they have to have those similarities, the GAG, the POL, the ENV, the LTRs, in order to perform one of their many functional roles, which is viral mimicry and tumor suppression, same thing. So yeah, everything about the ERV is functional. And the same thing goes with the reverse transcriptase, the integrase, in terms of the fact that they can jump around, turning genes on and off. And a lot of the variation generated is passed on to the next generation. So all of these things, it's not just one or two parts that are functional. It's just wrong when the evolutionists point that out. Everything about the ERV is necessary to perform these roles. Andrew, go ahead, take your time.
Hey, Donny, can I ask a question too?
Yeah, sure, brother.
I was going to ask, do you try to touch on what's called the polymorphism code functions with ERVs and DNA? Are you familiar with that word?
Yeah, are you talking about like a polymorphism, like a variation, or like a single nucleotide?
Well, yeah, it's another classic example we were talking about earlier tonight, where we can't understand God's technology, God's code, until we learn how to do it on our own. So polymorphism, it's a human term for what we do with our own code, like you were actually talking about, like with our own software today, where we literally use identical code from one function or class structure to another, with either a slight variation or just a instantiation, as it's called, of a new object, to do something similar, but in a different way, and oftentimes in a different part of a program, or even an entirely different program, exactly as ERVs do.
Right.
ERVs are a classic example of what's called polymorphism in software design.
Well,
Hey,
a world without, actually, no, before I say anything else, Andrew, I want to be respectful. Go ahead, because I know there's some things you probably want to respond to there.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying here, that each of these elements can itself have a function. But I don't think you really addressed my point that, or say, for example, you can have the ENV gene and the POL gene. Each can have its respective function for different organisms, but you don't necessarily find a complete sequence with the POL, the GAG, POL, and ENV gene all concentrated together and performing an integrated function.
Andrew, I just showed you that, yes, every single I'm sorry, but like, if you're gonna use Dr. Dan's arguments, then you're just gonna be shown to be wrong, because Dan's wrong. I just showed you that one of their functions in fighting off exogenous retroviruses and viral mimicry, if they didn't have the specific properties that make them up, like you're pointing out, the LTRs, the POL, the GAG, the ENV, then they couldn't perform that role. Everything about the structure of the ERV allows them to fight off viruses.
Okay, so to clarify, you are saying the GAG, POL, and ENV have to be together in order to perform this kind of viral repellent function. Is that what you're saying?
The viral mimicry function is dependent on their sequence similarity to exogenous retroviruses. Exogenous retroviruses are also made of what? LTRs, GAG, POL, ENV. The ERV also has to look like that in order to perform their job. For one, acting in tumor suppression, as we can see here, notice it actually teams up with ERVs, ERVs, to activate the immune system causing the immune system to attack villainous tumor cells that
Full
are
screen.
disguised as ordinary cells. So they have to look like the exogenous retroviruses in order to perform those roles. So yeah, what they're
Full screen.
the way they're structured, okay, is necessary to perform their roles. That means, yes, everything about the ERV is functional and necessary and important. Go ahead.
Donny, if I may further help strengthen that argument, again, in modern human software engineering, to be able to recognize, much less to adapt or quarantine a virus on a computer, you have your antivirus software has to have the same code as the virus to be able to identify, to be able to do the comparisons with it, much less to do certain things. Some viruses, or even like rootkits, for example, are so hideous. So so whatever you have to literally mimic parts of the viral code to be able to combat it. So you're describing literal software.
Exactly. Actually, you just said it perfectly.
Yeah, that's how vaccines work.
These antiviral programs that Brother Joel's pointing out here need to be built, need to have those similarities in code to that which they're attacking and stopping in order to do the mimicry mechanism. And just right here in this slide right here, this requirement explains why a creator, because here's one of the main arguments, speed of sound, Dan, Andrew, and it's a great question. It's a fantastic question. Why did God create functional units of DNA that resemble viral-like sequences? Well, this is the answer. And it just looks like Dan's rebuttal to my book was, well, I don't like the answer. You just shrug it off. It makes you wonder, is he really looking for an answer? So this requirement explains why a creator would introduce genetic elements into the human genome that share sequence elements with viruses. It's necessary. It's good design. And as Joel's pointing out, this is also what we see in man-made design, in coding, in computer systems. I typically look at modes of transportation. Go ahead, Andrew. Take your time.
So I'm sure you're of course familiar with the certain regions of the genome where instead of these complete ERV sequences, the genes themselves have been removed, and you have LTRs on one side, or more, I guess more commonly, a single LTR. So for that, you would have to prescribe different functions, would you not?
Well, yeah, and I have a whole section on that in my book too, right here, actually. You mentioned it right as we were on the slide. So most of the so-called shared sequences, right, because it's not just like 100, it's thousands, but we're not looking at full ERV sequences. And what I mean by full is you have the host genome, and then bam, right there, you got the LTRs, the GAG pol, the ENV. What we see is a lot of solo LTRs. Notice this slide. If you read that carefully, 90% of ERV sequences don't even resemble full. This is what you're talking about, Andrew. It's a good point. Or true endogenous retrovirus, because they lack standard ERV genes, GAG, pol, ENV, and simply represent, notice this, simply represent long terminal repeats, which can serve as binding sites for initiating or enhancing gene expression. So in other words, what we're looking at here has nothing to do with the ancient remnant of a viral infection. No, we're just looking at functional stretches of DNA that function in many ways right here, gene expression. So yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, we expect function, and then that's what we find. Go ahead.
And Donny, if I may as well, again, real quick, you seem like you know about jumping genes as well. You're referring to LTRs and line 1 retrotransposons I heard you mention earlier. The jumping gene phenomenon, I think, further confirms what you're talking about, and I can help expand if you.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like for example, right here is a paper. ERVs or retrotransposons, they can jump through they can spread through a copy and paste mechanism. Yeah, they could literally move around the genome.
Right. It's not something that happens during mitosis or gender expression, or not gender, sorry, sexual transformations, whatever. It happens in all, constantly in real time in a single organism. All of our cells right now, all of our genes are constantly, like we used to think that it was a problem. We thought that jumping genes was causing diseases, and it was literally, the DNA actively self-destructing or whatever. It turned out to be the exact opposite, especially line 1 retrotransposons. I try to talk to people about, that do AI code type stuff. how line ones, they're literal, they're almost identical, if not identical, to a lot of the code that we try to do for human code development for AI technology. It's literal AI written in the DNA code, not figuratively, literal, that are purposefully. Yeah. See, thank you. My understanding, and please let me know if I'm misunderstanding this. These things happen. These jumping genes, these retrotransposed, happen on purpose. They're parts of the code are literally copy and pasted, like you said, with direction, with purpose, with reason, with pre-engineered branching structures, basically, as we talk about in basic code. And if it wasn't pre-programmed to do it that way, then life probably wouldn't exist. We'd be all big, giant, disgusting mutant, creatures from the lagoon or whatever. But it's not. We're very, we're falling apart. The design probably, I mean, whatever. The point is that there is so much just obvious, miraculously functioning code in seemingly random processes that we're only barely beginning to understand because of our own literal human software. And I guess talking about ERVs and the suppositions, the assumptions that they were transferred from external organisms or viruses that changed our code today. Jumping genes is an even greater example of how this is all done on purpose, right?
Right. They don't just jump around randomly. They actually have preferred integration sites. And this goes back to, and then Andrew, I want to give you as much time as you need to respond right here in my slides. These are papers from like Nature. These are secular sources that are pointing out, notice, the ability of transposons to increase genetic diversity. Oftentimes as creationists, we'll call these, because here's the thing, the ERV sequence did not call itself endogenous retrovirus. The ERV sequence was named that by scientists who believe that they really are the ancient remnants of past viral infections. I prefer calling them either created units of DNA function or variation-inducing genetic elements, although they do a lot more than just generate variation, but that's one of their functions. So right here, together with the ability of the genome to inhibit most T activity, result in a balance that makes transposable elements an important part of evolution. And of course, this important part of evolution is the presupposition there. And gene regulation in what? All organisms that carry these sequences. Why do all organisms share these types of sequences? Well, if they're utilized by the organism for gene regulation, gene expression, determining cell types, embryological development, so on and so forth. But the last thing I want to say, Andrew, and hand it over to you, their ability to actually move to certain parts of the genome. Okay, like maybe you've got this gene here and another gene, and right in between, gene A would allow it to turn on a specific gene or something. It's like it's programmed to just non-randomly insert itself there in order to do a job. Its ability to do this is also predicated on the properties and structure of the transposons or the ERV sequences. So again, when the evolutionists like Dan ask, well, why do they resemble so closely exogenous retroviral-like material? It's like, again, the evolutionists are missing the point. The way they're structured is necessary to carry out their many, many roles. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, even if they do carry a specific function, I don't understand how that explains why they share particular locations in the genome.
Because they were created that way. Holy damn.
Well, again, that's the polymorphic.
Well, I haven't
code
finished
design.
my point yet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, because you can have specific DNA elements that perform a specific function. You can switch them around the genome, move them to another chromosome, if you will. We actually see this with different genes, for example, with hemoglobin, and they'll still perform the same exact function. Their location in the genome does not dictate their function. So even if these elements do contain a specific, maybe necessary function, that still doesn't explain why the designer would put them in these homologous locations in the genome, accounting for certainty, of course.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd love to address that again. So again, even in I want to say classic human software engineering design, it's called polymorphism. It's used in biology terms now as well, but it originated in information science. It's the idea that you can basically parent class type structures, as we also call it, or object-oriented programming, where you can create one section of code or a class and create what's called child classes to it, which have either the same or slightly different variables or methods inside of it, sequences, I guess is what we would describe it as in a biological term. And it can also borrow from and still use the near identical, if not identical, sequences in the parent class. It's called. It's a form of transference, and we see that what you're describing is exactly what we're seeing in DNA. So you're seeing the reason. The reason is because that's how God designed the code, is through these polymorphic design algorithms. The things that we use for modern human software engineering, exactly the same, for the same exact reasons. It's basically so you don't have to, copy the same code over and over and over and over and over. It's already, in certain sections and in certain ways to be accessed, and the compiler does just really cool things to make it so that it makes the human side of it, the software engineer's job, a lot easier. And then whenever it gets compiled, just like in DNA, it does a lot of repetitious things, a lot of things that you see in other parts of the sequence, like ERVs. It makks it easier.
Well, here's the
easier
question I
for me
want
in
to
this
ask.
case because the cells themselves are replicating.
But
That's
again,
what I'm saying.
I have to jump in here because
for the compiler.
I just want to say this, because this is what the evolutionist does. Okay, we point out that if we can demonstrate that these units of DNA, okay, or these stretches of DNA are functional, then the reason why we share them with other creatures, let's say humans and chimpanzees, is due to common design. They're not junk. They're not useless. They're not reflective of common descent, evolutionary.
I didn't say it was just because we shared them.
No, but wait a minute. But Andrew, again, you're dodging the way everybody else dodges in the evolutionary camp. Explain. You can't just hand wave away these functional roles we're talking about. Again, if we did not have them, from your own secular literature, they admit we would not exist. And all you said as a response, and that's okay, because it's typically all Dan says as well, and he's got a PhD in virology, right? Because there's no good answer. When you read through these papers, all you get is, well, engines of evolution, co-option, maybe this, maybe that. Well, I think they're functional because of this. Let's see empirical evidence. Show me one technical paper. I've been asking for this for the last 3 years.
Well, we're going back to the function point, but you haven't addressed the original point I made.
Andrew, please.
How did these ERV sequences evolve these abilities?
Andrew,
you're switching up the topic again. Address the original point I made.
The original
if I can also reiterate,
why do we share them with other creatures? And we already explained.
Again, I said it's not just the mere fact that we share them with other creatures.
But here's the thing. I understand you want to go to the nested hierarchical distribution of them. They're functional, and they're fun. But here's the thing, Andrew. Their functions you can't explain. Their functions are pretty many of them irreducibly complex.
Irrelevant
to the argument for common ancestry.
So they're functional roles that cannot be accounted for by evolutionary processes. Is irrelevant.
Who said they can't be accounted for?
This is a dodge.
You can't answer, dude. Just say you can't answer.
Just hand waves away.
You haven't answered my question.
Andrew, I just want you to take as long as you want. What's your best technical paper that can convince us that these many functional roles that we went over the last 30 minutes, how can these evolve?
If I may, real quick, again, reiterate for everybody, not just Andrew, we can learn how to code. OOP design is not rocket science. It's common. I mean, high school kids learn it. If we can all just put aside the common talking points, learn to code. Andrew, everybody, learn how to do polymorphic code design. It's not hard. Once you learn how to do these things on your own, then it makes sense. It answers all those questions.
And why does the polymorphic?
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in that kind of stuff.
Well, I just want to hear.
Why does the coding principles you're talking about explain why they have to be in specific locations?
That's my point. When you learn how
the
design works,
you
you learn how to use it for yourself.
You learn
how God used it.
Well, let me ask a basic question that everybody would understand. Okay.
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to be serious.
No, and you're doing great, Joe.
Are you going to analogies
Why
again?
is the engine in
Please don't go
all
to
sorts of
analogies.
No,
called
stop it,
software
Andrew.
engineering.
Stop
It's
it.
not useful to the argument.
Why?
Oh,
You're
Answer
playing
this
dumb,
question.
dude.
Why is the engine found in all sorts of modes of transportation in the same spot?
because it's
I'm
a
not
good
going to
design.
answer it until you answer my
Exactly.
original
You don't want to
question.
answer it because it destroys your
Well,
objection. The engine
so
is designed
And
in
cars
similar
are
spots
not
and modes of
applicable to
transportation
genetic
for
sequences.
functional purposes, for good
Well,
design. It's
design
common
is.
design.
Yes,
It's
they
an
are.
analogy, and analogies are not applicable here.
No, it isn't. It is in the realm of design. So whether it's software or any body of work, we call it any engineering body of work, it's a combination of tried and true design principles that we share across industries. And so that's what Donny is trying to help, I think, illustrate through. There's common design principles that we
Amen.
can learn from and adapt. But more importantly, to answer your specific question and questions, that everybody likes to ask about, to learn how and to learn the answers to why God did certain things in the language of God, as the Human Genome Project calls DNA. Learn how to code yourself. Then the answers become clear.
Right. And here's the thing. The evolutionists, they argue from their own, it's a straw man. Okay. So they don't want to first assume our position, steel man our model. They just want to say, no,
I am
don't
assuming
go to
your
car
position.
analogies. Our model suggests, okay, that what we're looking at is due to common design. And if we're made in the image of God, as the Bible suggests, we would predict that we should be able to get a sense for how God designed the biological world,
Which
based on the
fails
way
for
we
multiple
design
other
things.
reasons, which I can
No,
explain.
it doesn't fail. The only person failing, okay, it's not your fault. The only person failing is the PhD evolutionist like Dan, who use these weak arguments and then you
Why
repeat them. It's
are
even
you
your
not
fault, it's
addressing
Dan's
the
fault.
original topic?
I've got my screen
Let
share.
me say it again.
I'm
Let me
almost done.
say
I'm
it
almost
again.
done. I got my, okay, go ahead. Say it again. But, and I want the audience to recognize the fact that you're dodging the functional question, just like all evolutionists, speed of sound, everybody. You
Well,
guys
I'm not
never
dodging the
answer the
functional
simple question.
because
How
I'm
can
saying
these
even
functional
if
roles
they
evolve?
do have a function, that doesn't explain why they have shared locations. Not just
Yes,
the fact
it
that we
does.
share them
Oh my
between
God.
organisms,
It's like talking
but
in
the fact that
circles
they are
now.
the same locations in the genome. You
It's the way
claim
the
to have
designer
explained
put it
that, but
way.
you haven't.
Okay, guys, hey, just let Andrew take as much time as he wants.
Hey,
Then I
hey,
want
I'm done.
uninterrupted
Andrew.
time to make my point.
Andrew, let me make a quick point. Andrew, why do you think chimpanzees and humans have nails in the same place? Why do you think that might be? Moron, dude.
Well,
Okay,
to be
if you
nice
just look
about
at
it,
this basic slide, no, and I understand that Andrew doesn't like this, and that's fine because a lot of evolutionists are willingly ignorant. This for the audience, because this is for the audience. There's a lot of evolutionists they're just not willing to change their mind. Andrew is pretty
Your
much
nail
asking,
argument
Andrew,
there is
please
not
don't talk
applicable
over me.
to
I'm almost
specific
done.
genetic elements, and I explained why earlier.
Okay, listen. Andrew's question is pretty much, if my shared his screen, John, why does this, crossover vehicle and these sedans and this SUV and so on and so forth, how come the tires are all, designed in the same spot? How come the windshields are all in the front? How come the
This
engines
is
are all
irrelevant because
here?
I already
No, it's not
showed.
irrelevant. That's your question. Human engineers are designing these functional parts in the same spots for a reason and good reason. Now, if we have an ERV sequence that functions in embryological development, then it makes sense. Notice here, what do we share most with in the biological world? Well, when it comes to anatomy, morphology, genetics, and physiology, we share the most with the chimpanzee. So yeah,
That
we are
doesn't
going
mean
to
we should
expect.
share molecular sequences.
Of course it does.
Yes,
No,
it does.
doesn't.
It does.
Yes, it does.
Do you not know what the wobble
You're
base
not
is?
debating in an honest way, Andrew, okay? Because anybody who's objective should be able to recognize the fact that humans, chimpanzees, look at, we've got both binocular vision, we're mammals, we have hands, feet, we're built the same. Therefore, the underlying genetics, that codes for the phenotype and the physical features are obviously going to be similar as well.
The genetic code is redundant. That doesn't follow.
Just like my code is, Andrew. My code is redundant. My code has mistakes. My code has all kinds of comments and things
that the
years
molecular
past
sequence
that I never knew was
doesn't
going to
have
stick
to
around.
correlate
I
with
like
the
to finish my point.
morphology.
I want to finish my point. I know you don't like to hear this, but the things that that what I describe as anti-scientists make believe about reasons why DNA can't be coded for or can't be engineered. The same exact things happen with engineers like us. So it's not just objectivity, I would argue, Donny. It's raw experience. A lot of people don't have experience in science or engineering or technology in general. They're just clueless. They're like, often, not to be too facetious, but it's like a kindergartner trying to explain to a plasma engineer their crayon is a good dopant material, for plasma physics. It's like, okay, well, do you want to learn how plasma physics works first before you ask questions on how and why things are? It's the same thing with these biology and information debates, I think.
Oh, again,
but the thing is, crayons don't reproduce, Joel.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the level of sophistication we get from the evolutionists. Andrew, please just answer the basic.
Donny, maybe crayons could reproduce if given enough time.
I think people just lazy nowadays. They don't want to do the research.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure human engineers, I'm sure, car manufacturers, car companies would love if cars could reproduce. I mean, that would help with labor. That would help with time. I mean, you design one car and then you just hit a button and they just keep reproducing.
Answer my arguments, then I see no reason why I should stay here.
No, Andrew, you're dodging. Okay, now I'm actually starting to get a little bit annoyed. Answer the basic question that I asked you when you first joined. Show me one single technical paper. I don't want, I think this, I think that, maybe this, maybe that, imagination, story time. Show me one empirical example of a non-functional ERV or non-functional property of an ERV going from non-functional to functional or even altering their function. Everybody be quiet. I want to hear Andrew's answer. Go ahead, Andrew.
Why should we expect that to happen in a single generation?
Exactly. So you don't have an example.
That's all! He's down! And it is all over!
Answer the basic question that I asked you when you first joined. Show me one single technical paper. I don't want, I think this, I think that, maybe this, maybe that, imagination, story time. Show me one empirical example of a non-functional ERV or non-functional property of an ERV going from non-functional to functional or even altering their function. Everybody be quiet. I want to hear Andrew's answer. Go ahead, Andrew.
Why should we expect that to happen in a single generation?
Exactly. So you don't have an example.